It is the time of the year where this little dude just starts to dominate. We are talking about the 6-inch Magdraft from Megabass. Every year, right around March, tournaments all across the country start getting one on this thing. And for the next few months, this is going to be a key piece in a lot of anglers' arsenals, including this guy. So today, we're just gonna do a Magdraft refresher course. Really, it's so that I remember what to do, because it's been a few months since I've thrown these. We're just gonna talk through the lineup. We're gonna talk about the differences between the original and the Freestyle. I'm gonna go through the entire color run, and we're gonna talk about when to maybe throw each color, and talk about some alterations, the rods, the reels, just the whole bit. So if you wanna learn more about throwing the 6-inch Magdraft, come along for the exciting journey. Let's go. Welcome to the Hookup Tackle. The Hookup Tackle is the world's largest showcase of Megabass products, featuring baits and colors not found at any other dealer. The Hookup also offers a wide display of OSP, Evergreen, Depths, Lucky Craft, Jackal, and many more. The Hookup Tackle is owned and operated by family, is staffed by guides and verified tackle nerds who love helping anglers elevate their craft. If you're in the Phoenix area, we'd love to have you stop by our showroom and check out the wonderful world of Megabass and the Hookup for yourself. If you shop online, there are almost 10,000 SKUs of Megabass products alone, with hundreds of other companies and new products being added daily. So next time you're looking for that hard to find bait, that color your fish have never seen before, or maybe you just want to elevate your game, look at thehookuptackle.com. Welcome back, my friends. I am Ben with the Hookup Tackle, Tackle Otaku on Instagram, being joined by my buddy and large Magdraft master guru sensei, Jeffrey the King. Jeff, good morning.
That is who I am, and I'm glad you refer to me as such.
Well, I'm glad I make you happy. You want to have a beer?
No.
Okay.
Ew.
Yeah, just like that. Ruined. Loser. Big Magdraft sensei master and no beer drinking loser. That should be. I just got to extend it out.
Is that the video?
Yeah, we're done. Yeah, we're basically done. Let me put it on your business card.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. Okay, so today we're talking about the 6-inch Magdraft specifically. Now, as a lot of you guys know, Magdraft has a small 5-inch version that they only do like limited batches of every few years. We'll get some, right? Then there's the 6-inch, which is kind of the staple size for everybody. There's an 8-inch and a 10-inch. Now, Jeff is a huge fan of the 10-inch because he only throws big stuff, right? If you guys want to learn more about the 10-inch, Jeff is the guy to learn from, right? So you can go through, Jeff will put a link to his channel up here somewhere. Go through his channel. He shows you alterations, how he throws it, fish catches, like the whole bit. But today we're talking about fun sizes to throw, right? I see you shaking your head, Jeff. The 10-inch is kind of sucks to throw.
It's a fun bait.
The 6-inch is one that pretty much everybody in the country could add to their arsenal. It basically just weighs an ounce. So there are definitely some specialized rods for making this perfect, and we'll talk about gear here in a second. But let's break down this rod and why it works so good. Did I just say break down this rod? Yeah, see, I started talking about beer and already I'm acting drunk, Jeff. Should we crack one? I'll crack one if you crack one.
I'm not cracking anything.
Okay. Magdrafts then. We'll just talk about stupid fishing tackle. All right. What is it about a Magdraft, Jeff, that you love so much? I know obviously you throw the 10, I like the 6, but they're built the same.
Yes.
We fish them different ways, but what is it about the bait that you've had so much success with that gives you confidence?
Well, for when I was fishing it, it was very under the radar. And we're going back like 7 years ago, dude. I was just looking at this. I'm like, man, it's been 7 years when I first started throwing the Magdraft. And it's like, back then, people like, yeah, it's a Magdraft, but we have all these other things that we're going to fish. Nobody really understood the idea and the concept of the Magdraft. So when I started fishing it, it was cool because nobody else was fishing it. And my first trip on it, I think I had like 4 or 5 bites. I caught like a 7. I dumped another fish that was like 7. I was like, oh, okay. So right then and then, I was like, this is different, and the fish are eating it. And then the second trip, caught another 7 in a completely different spot, where I was like, oh, I was fishing it in grass, ripping it out, and boom, I caught another fish. And it's like, so it's versatile too?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I just went further and further down the rabbit hole, and it's like, dude, this thing is legit. And what I liked most about it was you can fish it slow, but it has a lot of action. So the head's wobbling while the tail's kicking in the back, and it gives off a draft, as in mag draft, right?
Yep.
So you have this 2-in-1 action where the head's wobbling, the tail's going, and you're fishing it at a slow retrieve. Money. No other bait really on the market really did that. And I thought that it really helped my fishing.
So you are kind of responsible for me getting into the mag draft, because I remember when you started going down your rabbit hole and jacking them, you were kind of one of the only people to buy mag drafts back then. So I'd see you come in every week and you're buying more mag drafts.
Yeah.
And it was always the big one. And I remember us having conversations like, what the fuck are you doing? And you're like, oh, you can't tell anybody, but I'm catching them on this thing. You know what I mean? And we started having these conversations like, oh shit, maybe there's something more to it. Because at first glance, you look at it in the package, it's a paddle tail swim bait.
Right.
And every brand has a paddle tail swim bait, right? But there's something special and magical about a mag draft, which is why all of us have it as a super important. Like literally, this is going to be tied onto my rod now, probably now through like early July, right? So let's just break it down really quick in case you're new to the mag draft, wondering what it is about a mag draft that's so special. So the name, obviously, mag, refers to the magnet that's inside, okay? So inside of this bait, there is a rigged harness, and this happens to be the color albino pearl shad, which is the #1 selling color. This is one that should be in everybody's arsenal, whether you're fishing clear water, stained water, whatever. This color just gets bit really well. But you can see that harness in there, and right here underneath, there's like a lead ball that has a magnet. When you put that on there, that magnet is designed to hold that hook in place, right? So that when you hold it, that hook doesn't really fall down. That's the idea and the intention behind the magnet. Now, in full transparency, the magnet means absolutely nothing to me. It's not a super strong magnet, so if you make a hard enough cast or you skip the bait or whatever, that hook kind of has a tendency to fall down anyways. I never even use the magnet. So this is designed, you'll notice that the baits have this kind of like groove on each side, so it's designed for your hook to just kind of stay like that. 100% of the time, it also has a hook slot. I just put it like that. I would rather have 2 hooks down here on the bottom and 1 hook inside than for me to have this all out here and be worried about that little magnet in there. Because the reality is sometimes these get poured and the magnet is higher in the body or lower in the body, or it could even be a little more to the left, a little more to the right. So the amount that it holds your hook is going to vary from bait to bait, and I don't like things that vary. It's a cool idea, but it really doesn't really have any effect on the bait itself. What makes the bait so dope is the actual shape of the bait. So Megabass designed this to not just have a paddle tail and not just have a head wobble like what Jeff referred to, but they designed it in a very specific way by using these fins, by using kind of a 2-shaped plastic where it kind of gets wider in the middle and then has a very distinct line that goes down the sides, so that as this thing is swimming through the water like this, the water is hitting those fins, hitting that kind of larger midsection, and then it's drafting behind it, that tail is kicking it, and it's dispersing it out. Right? So it's creating an actual kind of draft in the water that those fish are feeling on their lateral line. Right? Fish are going to sense baits in different ways. They might hear it, they might see it, they could feel it as well. So this is one of those things that's visual, but it's also giving them all those good vibes that they're feeling like, shit, that's something that's actually real. Right? When a bait is moving through the water, or a bluegill or a shad or whatever is moving through the water, those fish feel that happening. Right? It's not just, they don't just know what's in front of them. If shad or bait is moving over here, they can feel that, they can hear that, and they can turn around. They use all those senses to kind of key in on what they're after. And this is just one of those great baits that appeals to multiple senses. Some are just straight visual, some are visual and hearing, right? Some are hearing and feeling. This is one of those that's sight and feel, and it's just a great combination, right? So as you're moving this thing, like Jeff said, you're going to have a head wobble that's very distinctive while that tail is back there kicking, and it's kind of at different speeds. So you're gonna get that little head wobble that's gonna get into a thump while that tail's kicking, and you're gonna feel it vibrating at the end of your rod. Now, we just talked about kind of our favorite baits of March not too long ago, and we covered a lot of this, but just to kind of recap what we talked about, it's super important that you guys get in sync with what this bait feels like and the speed in which you need to fish it, okay? And we'll talk about gear and gear ratios and stuff here in a minute. But every rigged swim bait, whether it's a Magdraft or even a line through or something like that, pretty much every bait has some type of sweet speed that you kind of need to figure out. With the Magdraft, it's critically important, okay? This definitely has like one speed that it's designed to do. This is not a bait that you're gonna be able to fish really slow like Jeff was talking about and then all of a sudden like burn back. It doesn't work like that. This is literally a throw it out there and wind it in at its exact sweet speed and just let the bait do what it's designed to do. You're not gonna twitch it and pop it and speed it up and burn it and do all these different things. It's just kind of a cast and wind bait. So it's an easy bait. If you guys are just getting into like larger baits or swim baits, it's a no-brainer to add. If you're a super experienced tournament angler, I mean, you're gonna see on the Elite Series and MLF, I mean, over the next couple of months, almost every tournament, a Magdraft's gonna play a major role. It's just a great thing to throw. So,
hold on. You gave out some bad information.
Oh, okay.
So you can give it twitches. You can give it some rips and stuff like that. So when I was fishing the 10-inch, sometimes to get bit, you had to just give it like a quick little speed up.
Yep.
And what the bait will do is it's going, and when you give it the speed up, it pops, it shoots, and it flares and it flashes.
Okay.
And a lot of times after that speed up, as the bait kind of rights itself, that's when we used to get bit.
Got it.
And then there's also times where we would get a follower that comes out of a dock. You would twitch it, and like the pop of it flashing and rolling got the fish to actually bite it.
Cool.
So it just depends.
And I agree with that. And don't take everything that I'm saying for exact science. Like, you guys are going to need to go implement this yourself, right? Also, I could say that I gave out wrong information because I can't tell you how many times we've used this as like a dock skipping bait, and you skip it on a dock and you got your slow little retrieve, and then you have a follower and all of a sudden you just speed it up and you start figure eighting the thing, and the thing's like sideways and upside down and they eat it.
Yeah.
Right? So Jeff's right. There are times when giving it the twitch, giving it the jerk, speeding it up can really have a critical trigger draw power to it. But I don't think this is something you guys need to worry too much about. Like, it's not like an A-rig where you're all the time gonna like give it a pop or give it a twitch. Like, most of the time when you're fishing this guy, it's more of a picking the right angle and understanding the speed and understanding what it feels, right? So when we're talking about the speed, if you go too slow with this thing, it doesn't really do anything. And if you go too fast with this thing, it rolls on its side and doesn't get bit. So you kind of have to find the perfect speed to where it goes straight and it does its thing. And I'm gonna tell you right now, when you open the package and you tie this on, the perfect right speed is very slow. Like, this is not a bait you're gonna just throw down there and just be like winding away. This is a bait that needs to go pretty slow to work correctly, okay? And we'll talk about how to control that. What I would do if this is new to you is I would just tie it on, make some casts that are like 10 or 12 feet away, okay? Just throw it out there and then just wind it and learn where it is. Like, where is the sweet speed? Where do I need to be? Ah, there it is, that's straight. Okay, do it again. Yep, that's right. Now I can make my long cast and I know my speed. At the same time you're learning your speed, you also want to learn how this is transmitting whatever vibration it's doing to your rod. Okay, so it's really important that you're in sync with, okay, the tail's thumping, I can feel it. And it's not like it's going to be like a jackhammer where it's just like, but you're going to feel something on there. You're going to get in sync with how it feels. The reason that's important is when a fish eats this, it can eat it a lot of different ways. But typically, they're convinced this thing is the real deal. And when they eat it, it's gone. It's very rarely like, well, let me bite the tail, right? It's usually just, and it's gone. And a lot of times what happens, the thing is coming through and those big fish will come up and just go, and they'll push it forward or they'll move it sideways. And it's not like a big jerk or a dunk, you know, something very distinctive. You're like, oh, that was a bite, and you swing. Most of the time, you're winding it in and you're like, there's the tail, there's the tail, there's the tail. I'm not feeling anything right now. And that's actually a bite, right? So you got to kind of get in sync to how it's feeling. And when you don't really feel anything, turn, and a lot of times there's a fish on the end. Now remember with this, because it has this exposed treble hook, you don't need a really hard hook set on this. Most of the time they've eaten it like this. Those hooks that's already in my hand, right? So if Jeff was on the other end of this rod and he just turned and gave me just a little push, that thing's buried and he's got me, right? So your hook set is almost always just a thump, and you just turn. The other nice thing about just kind of turning is if it's not a fish, or maybe it was a fish that missed it or pushed it, or maybe he ate it and spit it, by not like ripping it and jerking it and throwing it out of the water, you've given yourself a chance to just kind of keep the retrieve going. And a lot of times they'll bite it a second time, or maybe there was a pack of them or two of them and the first one ate it and spit it, and then it keeps swimming and the other one goes and gets it. So a lot of times by just not overreacting, you end up catching a fish. That makes sense? Okay, so let's talk about some colors, and then we're going to talk about the gear and how to alter this thing a little bit, okay? All right, so let's break down some colors. So we started with the albino pearl shad. This is our #1 selling color nationwide, okay? So this is one that if you're starting, you have to add it to the lineup. Now, it's a very simple pearl white. It's a milky. When I hold it up to the light, it's semi-transparent. Light goes through it. As you look at it kind of out of the light, it's got like a red pearl kind of hue to it. So it's simple and beautiful. It's effective. Largemouth bass, smallmouth bass. Anytime they're around shad, no brainer. But white's one of those colors that a lot of time is just a trigger color. It's a no brainer around shad, but even if you're fishing New York and they're eating gobies or crawfish or whatever, a white thing that's swimming and pushing, it can sometimes be a trigger. So this would always be a great place to start. The other one that I love is this guy, and this is whiteback shad. Okay, now I'm gonna take them all out so you guys can see, because I'm gonna show you side by sides on some of these. And I'm kind of going through how I break this down from start to finish. Now, a lot of this could be regional, it might be different for you, and we'll talk about that as well, okay? So here's whiteback shad. Okay, so compared to albino pearl shad, you can see it's a much more transparent coloring. Okay, so you've got kind of this grayish back, and then you've got basically a transparent body down there. So you get a lot more light going through it, you get a lot more profile breakdown. This would be an awesome option in clearer water. It's a great option as well as a substitute for this if the other 322 boats in front of you are all throwing albino pearl shad. And trust me, there's a lot of albino pearl shads out there. Keeps catching them, so we keep throwing. It's kind of like Morning Dawn Roboworm, right? I mean, fuck, it's caught every bass in the world by now, and they keep eating the stupid thing, so we keep throwing it, right? But this is a great option to just kind of mix it up a little bit, okay? So that would be color #2. You can fish it in even slightly stained. I mean, fish it wherever they're biting it. That's the best thing. But if you're just kind of trying to figure out which color do I throw, usually clear to slightly off-colored water is a good option for that guy. Now, another one that gets super overshadowed is this dude, and this is called Brownie. Now, Jeff and I talk a lot in some bigger swimbait conversations. You know, out here, some of the lakes that you fish, Jeff, are like trout-oriented lakes, right? So in the winter, they stock trout. Those bass kind of start feeding on trout. But back when I was throwing the big swimbait in those lakes before you were born, just kidding, I hardly ever threw actual trout patterns at them. A lot of time I was throwing carp patterns and tilapia patterns, bigger baits, trout profile, but you don't always have to throw the exact pattern that they're feeding on. Do you find that that is sometimes the case with you as well with what you're doing?
Well, I mean, I've talked to you about this 1,000 times. I don't think color matters that much.
Okay.
As in regards to, if the fish are keyed in on a trout profile, as long as you get the profile and size and the action of whatever lure you're throwing is good, I think they're going to smoke it. So, I mean, back when I was on the Magdraft, there's like 30 different trout colors.
Yeah.
I didn't like any of them,
Yeah.
so I just went with IU.
IU.
A greenback glitter base color, and it's like,
This
all
guy.
right,
That looks nothing like a trout.
nothing like a trout,
Right.
but my God, were they eating it, dude.
But they were looking for this type of bait.
Yeah.
Right?
Profile was perfect and everything, and I
Yep.
was putting it in the right places, and they ate it.
So that's kind of how I feel about this. Now, we've talked about this a million times. I think color is super critically important, right? But brownie's one of those ones that definitely goes under the radar because there's no brownie fish swimming around.
Unfortunately.
Right? So
no.
you have like shads, trouts, basses, gizzards, like things that are like, oh, my fish eat gizzards, let me get the gizzard color, right? And this one doesn't really have that label, so a lot of people just kind of pass by it, which is always funny to me. This is one of the most natural colors in the entire lineup. Okay, so it's almost a fully transparent, fully clear bait that has just a touch of like brown on the back, and that brown is even transparent. So when this thing is in the water, it's literally just like a minnow. I mean, it could be a shad, it could be a baby bass, it could be a carp, it could be so many different things, but in clear water, this thing is just a no-brainer to have, okay? So this is a critical one for me in clear water. Sometimes the white is too gaudy if that water is crystal clear, right? So a lot of times we're fishing, like Lake Pleasant is very similar to kind of like Great Lakes type stuff, where you can just see a mile out there, you can see a fish, right? This would be a great option for something like that. Let's talk about your color, IU. Okay, so IU is one of those that goes under the radar as well because we don't have any IU in the United States.
For now.
So why would you throw an IU colored swim bait, Jeff?
Yeah, ridiculous.
Doesn't make any sense.
I'm an idiot.
IU is one of those colors that I really love around any kind of vegetation. So if I'm fishing around grass, weeds, anything like that, I'm a sucker for anything that kind of blends into the environment. So the same goes for jerk baits, the same goes for, you know, if you've got aquatic vegetation, if you've got algae blooms that happen, if you've got greener kind of water, I'm a sucker for anything that's got some green. Now this has a half transparent body that has glitter in it. The back is kind of green. It's got that little chartreuse hit. It's just a great one for that kind of just slightly different looking water. They smoke IU. And again, Jeff is a testament to, they obviously don't need to be eating IU to eat IU. It's a great color, and it's a sleeper color. So if you're looking for a color in the line to just mix it up a little bit that not a lot of guys are throwing, that would be a really good one. This is another killer in clean to, I would say, medium stained water. Even though this is transparent, this is like my favorite Florida color. This is always going with me when I travel. This is MB Gizzard. Okay, so designed obviously to be like a gizzard shad imitation. You got a little bit of a pearl belly on there. It's fully transparent. You got some of those shad scales, that little bit of pink that goes down there. I absolutely crush them in Florida on this thing. It's literally like the only color I bring. And those fish that I'm fishing for are bluegill eaters, they're baby bass eaters, they're shiner eaters, right? But a lot of times they see a lot of the same thing. They see a lot of the same, you know, golden shiner patterns or whatever. And this just gives me a color that lets me be close enough to matching everything. I mean, a combination of that green and gold and brown on the back kind of looks like everything. It could be literally everything in the water, but it's transparent enough to where it looks a little bit more natural, hopefully, than what everybody else is throwing. So I would say clear water up to kind of mid tannic would be my choice for that guy. Now, there's two colors that also kind of go under the radar, and that's these two. So this is nude rainbow, and this is nude bass. Okay, now, this would leave you to believe baby bass, baby trout, right? But here's the crazy thing. Now, of course, if they're eating baby trout, throw the nude rainbow. No problem. But I know, like my buddy Justin, He fishes New York and destroys them on this thing. I guarantee you those fish aren't keyed in on trout. It's basically, here's albino pearl shad. Remember this guy? Nude rainbow. Almost identical. Like they're almost the same color. Kind of that red pearl, semi-transparent. Just the rainbow kind of brings in a little bit more solid body. You get that more trout coloring up top and the dots, obviously. But again, you could throw this at a shad eater, he's gonna eat it. Like it's not a big deal. So if you're looking for a bait that just kind of mix it up, that's a great one. The nude bass is also the same way. So I like nude bass a lot in the spring when they're smoking the albino pearl shad, because sometimes it gives it just a little bit of body. So there you go, albino pearl shad, nude bass, right? Very, very similar. As you turn it, this one just has a little bit more green, right? So you're getting it just a touch of color, just a touch of body, and sometimes that's enough to just get you a couple extra bites. It could be a crappie, and we've even caught crappie on these things, right? So those are great ones. And then finally, the last few that are in the lineup, silver shad is a color that can be incredibly effective in the middle of the day when it's super, super bright. Some guys catch them all the time on this thing, but inside of silver shad is like a holographic, reflective, almost abalone shell type piece. Is that showing up okay for you? So again, it's a super transparent bait. It's got, you know, very simple coloring, basically clear on the bottom, black on the top, but that little bit of flash as it's moving and that sun is hitting it is creating the illusion of different colors, fish scales, fish moving. It's an awesome one when that sun, so the sun's popped up before it's got to like straight overhead, when it's kind of in that trajectory, and then again in the afternoon when it's kind of in that trajectory to where it's hitting the bait and it's getting into that reflective piece. So when the fish are seeing it, they're seeing all that color shift. It can be a really cool one. So that's silver shad. There's this guy, Biwako shad. I feel about Biwako shad the same way I feel about Ayu. It's kind of a darker color, transparent bottom, kind of a bronzish back. In fact, if you hold up Ayu, they're kind of almost the same, just slightly different shades. This one's a little bit more green. This one's a little bit more kind of, you know, purplish. But they're great ones to fish around aquatic vegetation. They're great ones to fish a little darker water. So both of those would be good. They do make this crazy color, which is MSS. This is not one that I have in my lineup, but it's one that we sell a ton of for guys in dirty water. So it's basically kind of a blue with a little bit of chartreuse, kind of like a sexy shad kind of look. So in muddy water, guys absolutely smoke on this, especially early in the year when they key in on kind of like blue craws and that kind of stuff. Can be a really good one. And then finally, if you guys are fishing around perch, this would kind of be a no-brainer. So you guys in Minnesota and Wisconsin and New York, if there's perch in your area, this is just a great, fully transparent, natural perch pattern. Could also be a great bluegill pattern. So if you guys are down south and there's a lot of bluegills and you're looking for kind of a bluegill imitation, that can be a great one. Okay, what's the difference between the original Magdraft and the Freestyle? Okay, so the Freestyle is also a 6-inch. Open this package up. Let's take one out. You can see that the bait is almost the same, almost identical. So really the only differences that you have in the bait itself are just at the face, right here, okay? So the Freestyle is designed, it comes unrigged, there's no weight, there's no rigging, there's no harness. The Freestyle is designed for you to rig it on your own with some type of hook. Now, as far as rigging goes on this, you can experiment between a 6/0 and an 8/0. A lot of guys like the 6. I'm in love with the 8. I have a lot of confidence in the 8. I would say most people throw the 8. The owner beast hook is usually the way I go. If you guys are a Chokar fan or Gamakatsu fan or Ryugi or whatever, that's fine. But this is kind of the lane I live in. Now, every once in a while I'll throw it on just the regular weighted twist lock, but for myself, probably 90% of the time, this is the hook that it's going on. Now, just in case you guys are new to this, I'm just gonna rig one. We're gonna talk about it real fast. So, the rigging on this guy. Basically, you're just going to line this CPS spring up and you're gonna twist it on. Just make sure that as you're twisting it, that you're twisting it straight, okay? And I'll explain why I like this bladed one over the regular one, okay? Now there is a hook pocket that lines up in. You're just gonna line it up right to that little bend right there, and that's where you're going to bring this through. And when it pops out, it's gonna pop out. You just wanna make sure it pops out right in the middle of that bait, and then it's just gonna kind of sit there. So after it's all rigged, it's going to look nice and straight, okay? And it's gonna work great, okay? Now, if you are off center by any reason, then just bring the hook back in, take it back out, and just build yourself a little bit bigger ditch in there, and that'll even help that hook kind of pop out when you need it to pop out, okay? Now, this with the blade is going to give you depth control. Where we talked about this one being very, very slow, because of the build of this, you can't fish this very deep, okay, unless you really alter this thing, okay? So you're gonna throw this out no matter where you let it sink to. As soon as you start turning that reel handle, it's gonna start to track up high. This one, the weedless one, when you add that blade, when this sinks to the bottom, when it starts coming up, that blade is actually like preventing it from lifting too much higher. So it gives you a lot of depth control. It allows you to fish it in deeper water, 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet. If you want to work it down the bottom of a point, if there's a deeper grass bed and you want to get it into the grass and really kind of control the depth, you can do that with the Freestyle. Yes, it's weedless, but I don't really pay that much attention to it in this size because this is a pretty small little hook, and as long as you can cast well, you're really not getting this snagged very often, right? And the worst thing that happens is it snags and you kind of pull it out and it pops out. So it's not that big of a deal. But where this one really shines is its ability to depth control. So it allows you to fish this guy in the higher column, this one in the lower column. Colors are the same, so I would do the same process of getting or choosing the colors. Now, before we talk about rods and gear ratio, let's talk about this guy for a minute. There are a couple of little alterations that you can do to this. Now, as I mentioned, when you take this out of the package and you throw it and you wind it in, you got to find that sweet speed, and that sweet speed is usually pretty slow pace, okay? Now, what a lot of guys do is a lot of guys will use this, and this is just a nail weight, okay? So, if you want to increase your speed with this guy, you can throw it out there, wind it in, and see which way it drifts. And if it's drifting up to the right or to the left, you can use a nail weight and you can start inserting nail weights in there to give it more sink rate, to balance it in a different way, to fight that kind of roll to the left or the right. And you can utilize these. You can stick them in from the bottom, from the side, from the top, whatever you're trying to get to. Usually it would be from the bottom at a slight angle back is usually the easiest way to do it. You could even do one in the front, one, in the back, so it has more of a leveled fall. But this is kind of a tinker's way to do it to increase a little bit of speed. Now, I don't really enjoy the nail weight thing because every time I stick one in, I kind of counter it this way, then it goes this way, and then I got to readjust. It's something that takes a little bit of time. I like to tie something on and go fishing, right? So for me, I'd say probably 90% of the time I just take it out of the package and throw it. But Decoy makes this cool little thing. It's a coil sinker, okay? It's a DS15 coil sinker. They make it in a few different sizes. I like these lighter sizes because they're not very intrusive. So like this one's a 1/16 of an ounce. This one's a 3/32 of an ounce. But this guy is just a little twist-on sinker. Let me take one out and I'll show it to you. And they make them, by the way, in a 5 gram and a 7 gram. So depending on how fast you want this to go, you can alter it. The coil sinker is just a little spring sinker, okay? So what I like to do is I like to attach this right here. So you see where that harness is right there? So right in front of the hook, I try to go in and I try to get it to wrap around the wire of that harness there. Wrapped around the wire. That's it. Okay, so all I've done is attach that little weight right there to the bottom of that Magdraft. Because it's wrapped around the actual harness, it's gonna stay in there pretty good. Even if I'm skipping, it's not really gonna tear out, so I'm gonna get a lot of durability to it. But what that does is it just adds a little bit of weight to the front of it so that I can move it a little bit quicker, right? Just a little bit more speed. And sometimes that can be the trigger, right? Jeff talked about maybe twitching it or popping it to be a trigger. Sometimes just a little faster can be a trigger. Sometimes you just move your bait a little faster than everybody else. Could get you a few extra bites. So worth tinkering with. You might like it. You might not find that it does a whole lot different. It's not going to change the bait completely, but it's a cool little fast alteration. Now, let's talk about rods, line, and reels real quick. All right, let's talk about line first. We talked about that it has a sweet speed and you can't go too fast, right? You really gotta dial in that speed. Now, the lighter you go on the line, the better your bait is going to perform. And this is a pretty small swim bait, right? I know this might seem big to a lot of you, but in the grand scheme of things, this is pretty small. So it's going to be very temperamental to small changes, right? So if you go from 14 to 16, that's a big difference. Or 16 to 18, or 18 to 20, or 16 to 20 is huge, right? Same with if you change the hook, if you change your speed, all those things are gonna make big differences to the bait. So if you want the easiest line to just throw it and wind it in, I would recommend doing this. Something in like a 15 or 16 pound. Okay, so if you're a Seaguar guy, probably like a 15. If you're a Sunline guy, 16. This is the easiest line to throw it and swim it. It's gonna have a lot of motion to it. It's gonna have probably the best swim. It's kind of the best combination of heavy enough line to where you can, throw it in some cover, but it's light enough line to where the bait still has freedom to move. Now, if you're fishing it in really heavy cover, I throw it on 20 pound a lot, probably more than any other line if I'm fishing around super heavy cover. But I will tell you right now, you have to go painfully slow with that bait to make sure that it's tracking straight and not having any kind of drift left or right, okay? So if you want kind of a good in-between, 18 pound is super popular around here. I think most of the guys in the shop are throwing 18. Kind of bridges that gap. It gives you a little bit thinner, a little bit more strength. So it just kind of depends on what kind of junk you're putting your swim bait in. If it's more open water, dude, 16 is so strong, you can't really lose with it, right? But if it's more gnarly, if you're having to hook them and then really pull them and control those fish, then you're gonna have to figure out how to get the bait to do what it needs to do on 18 or 20. I'm a big fan of straight fluoro for all baits pretty much, but this kind of bait for sure, straight fluoro is right. Again, it's all a system for me. So it works with my rod, it works with my reel. If you're a braid guy, by all means, if it's working for you, stay with it. But if you're looking to kind of start, I just like the performance of the fluoro. I think I get more bites, I think I land more fish, and it's just controlled. Are you straight fluoro, Jeff?
Yeah, straight fluoro.
Okay. Do you agree on the sizing of the line?
I'd say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd want to add to that?
No, I think 16 is the best.
16 is kind of the magic size.
I mean,
yeah.
It's tough going to 20 on that small of a bait. Because I throw the 10-inch Magdraft on 20.
On 20, yeah. Right. And I would throw the 10-inch Magdraft on 20.
Yeah.
Like I said, 16 is where the bait's going to really have the best swim.
Yeah.
It's still going to give you enough strength to where if you hook a good one and you need to kind of pull on it a little bit, it still gives you some power, right? I feel like if I go to 14, then I just don't feel like it's enough, right? But sometimes when we're throwing that 6-inch mag, it's in some gnarly shit. It's in jungle, like there's trees everywhere, and your angle has to be so perfectly right next to something very dangerous that when you get bit, you almost have to hit and pull at the same time. And sometimes I feel like I need that 20 or that 18 to give me strength. So you guys are gonna have to just balance, right? You're gonna have to find the balance between strength and performance on line size. Now, let's talk about rods and reels for a minute. We've thrown a gazillion different rods at the 6-inch Magdraft, right? And we're always looking for something a little bit better, something cooler, something different, something just more enjoyable to use. Through the course of the last year, this had kind of become our Magdraft, our 6-inch Magdraft rod of choice. This is the Steez AGS 7.2 Heavy. This is the power pitch, okay? It's not designed for this, but it just ends up being just an amazing rod for that 6-inch Magdraft. It's got kind of a soft tip to it and then a very powerful backbone. So it handles the size well, it loads well, it casts great. I can't say enough good things about it. If you guys are skipping, it's an amazing skipping rod. It's a very similar rod to this guy. which is the Orochi XX Perfect Pitch, which historically, over the last probably 6-7 years, has kind of been the rod guys have thrown the 6-inch Magdraft on. They're built very similar. They're both 7.2. They both kind of have that softer tip and then the, you know, powerful butt section. The Steez is just going to give you a lighter, crisper, more elevated rod than the Orochi, right? So tapers are very similar. This is a great $349 option. You can get it in the Levante at $249. This would give you a $549 option, okay? Now, the other rod that has been making waves, pretty big waves here recently, has been this guy. And this is the Destroyer P5 BMG. Now, a lot of guys here in the shop, Griff, Ethan, they've replaced their 7.2 heavy Steez with this guy for the Magdraft. Now, it's giving you a 7.5, so it's giving you a little bit extra reach. So if you're making longer casts, if you're fishing it over grass beds and having to kind of maybe every once in a while just kind of rip the bait out of grass and letting it back down, it's giving you a little bit more rod, but it loads up so beautifully well. And again, designed as more of a jig rod, but when you really start to bend it, it has a very similar kind of design as that 7.2 Steez, just in a 7.5 version. So it's a super versatile rod, handles the Magdraft incredibly well. So you can't go wrong really with any of those options depending on which performance that you like the best. Now, when it comes to reels, can't emphasize this enough, your gear ratio is going to make all the difference here. Okay, again, because this is a slow retrieve style bait, I'm basically living in something like this. I'm basically living in like a 7-to-1 or a 6-to-1. Okay, now I don't care what you guys throw. If you want to throw Daiwa, Shimano, is there anything else? Something else, right? Throw whatever you want, but that 6-to-1 or 7-to-1 is really critical, because if you bump to an 8-to-1, they're so fast it's almost impossible to get into any kind of actual groove with the bait. You'll literally be moving that reel handle so slow, it's hard to really get comfortable. For me, it might work for you, but I would recommend doing something like this. I really love the Zillion's a great one. The Tatula Elite's a great one. The Zillion 1000 T-Wing HD is a great one. You can't really go, if you're going to choose one of these rods, you can't really choose too big of a reel. You got to stay in kind of like a 100 to 150 size. I guess you could go to a 200 size. 200 just feels so big on these rods, right? So 100, 150 size. You just want to choose a reel that's either HD, like that Zillion, or a reel that's kind of just put together like a full metal, it's just tight, that can handle the weight of 1 ounce over and over and over and over again. So this is pretty much where I live. I'm kind of here, right? One of these, like either a Zillion HD or just a regular Zillion. But Tatula Elite is a great option as well at a lower price point. Just really critical you guys stay at a lower gear ratio. Jeff just brought up a good point, and it reminded me of one more point. So two more points for you guys. Bait storage, okay? Thank you for bringing this up, Jeff. I know that it can be kind of a pain in the ass to have a bunch of these packages around, right? If this bite is good, I'm not shitting you guys, like I'll bring like 20 of these, like in each color, like baskets of them, because if the bite's that good, there's days where you can catch 50 to 100 fish on one of these. And eventually it's soft plastic, so the harness is gonna start pulling out, they're gonna tear, right? And you need to put another one on. If I'm skipping, I kind of suck at skipping. So a lot of times I skip and that motherfucker's back up under some dock. It's like, that ain't coming out, cut it. You know what I mean? So, you know, I'm gonna go through some baits. The good news is they're not that expensive, they're like 12 bucks, right? 12, 13 bucks. But the number one way to ruin these, besides jacking a bunch of fish on them, is storing them improperly. So if you just take this out and put it in a Plano box, and that Plano box shifts and that bait goes like this, when you get to the lake, all your Magdrafts are gonna be like this. They're gonna be kinked, or that tail's gonna be folded or something weird, and the bait's not gonna swim right. So for storage, I can't emphasize enough, you wanna store them in the original clamshell. This is key. And I would say this is the case with any paddle tail swim bait. We're talking about the Magdraft right now, but any paddle tail swim bait, if it's K-Tex, if it's Spark Shads, if it's whatever, they all stay in the clamshell for me. I want that tail and that body to be perfectly straight. So you can take this white thing off if you want. Like if you just want the little clamshell and you don't want this like white packaging, like you could take that off, right? For me, I usually just get some kind of like weather tight Ziploc or a pouch or some kind of just case, and I just store them all in a case, right? That's the easiest way for me. Or sometimes just a basket of my 100 fucking Magdrafts, and I throw it in the boat, okay? So super critical that you guys are storing it like that. One more thing. I can't emphasize enough on this, and this is ultra critical on this guy for me. If you YouTube enough things on how to set the hook or how to cast a Magdraft, you're gonna find a lot of different opinions, okay? The number one way I can tell you to land fish on this is if I make a cast here, so I'm throwing straight overhead, right? It is critical to your land ratio that you are not pointed straight at the bait. You have to have some kind of slight off angle, 15 degree, 20 degree, 30 degree. It's gotta be off angle, right? So this would be straight on to the bait. This would be slightly off. Super important. What happens is when you're right on, you feel stuff so fast that you swing before the bait ever really got positioned correctly in the fish, unless you have trained yourself so freaking incredibly well that you can feel the bite and be like, boom, okay, 1, 2, 3, boom, right? I'm not that way. I feel the bite and I need to kind of turn. Also, by being at an angle, it allows me to feel that bite, thunk, and then turn, and then if I'm wrong, I can keep that bait in the strike zone, or oh, got him that time, right? That's it. This isn't a big, huge swing. If I'm pointed straight at the fish, most of the time, thunk, they get a bite, and I kind of have to go up, and that's pulling the bait out. You're never gonna get that second bite, okay? So make sure you kind of turn slightly. You'll see that your land ratio goes sky high on this. Even on that freestyle, if I get bit here, thunk, then I might just wind it down a little bit, and then I'm cracking the whip hard to the side. Okay, so the freestyle is more of a hook set. The regular one is just that turn, but it's still at a slight offset so that I know, boom, there's the bite. Okay, wind down and go. It's not happening too fast, okay? All right, guys, that is a wrap on 6-inch Magdraft. I know that was a lot to digest. Hopefully that helps you guys get some dust off and remember what you guys were doing last season. If you're new to it and you have any questions, or if you guys have any question at all, retrieve, colors, gear, whatever, drop it down below. I will definitely get answers for you. Jeff will leave links to everything we've talked about if you guys want to check them out more. But guys, throw the Magdraft this season, no matter where you are. Smallmouth, largemouth, ponds, big lakes, rivers, whatever. They smoke the thing. You guys will have a ton of fun if you utilize it in your arsenal. So on behalf of myself and Jeff and everybody here at the Hookup Tackle guys, thanks for the time to watch these videos. Thank you for the support. Just thinking about that beer, Jeff. I'm ready. Have a great day, everyone. I'm going drinking. Peace.